What defines our lives? Is it just an overwhelming amount of fate due to circumstances present, or do we truly have agency? As people living everyday lives, that's a question that most everyone has had some time thinking about. How would you accept trying to be proactive in a world you know will make the decisions for you? Reasonably, everybody would love a world where they could be the pilots of their own story and make the decisions, but that's simply just not always the case. This very idea is highlighted in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So, in the novel, she uses characterization and irony to ask, to what extent is Victor Frankenstein responsible for his final outcome? Throughout the novel, Victor makes a series of less than morally valid decisions in relation to the monster he creates. A notable and the first of these is Justine's trial, where Victor was fully aware of Justine's innocence, but was all too afraid to take responsibility for his hand in William's murder. Later, Victor even gives the monster hope of a mate, but then destroys his creation before it can be finished, actually making the monster even angrier. This does nothing to soothe or alleviate the animosity shared between the two characters, proving that Victor still has an opportunity to mend things, but deliberately goes out of his way to worsen them. After concluding the novel and reviewing all the events, one can conclude that the monster was not innately bad, but was tainted by Victor's abandonment and lack of guidance. Mary Shelley writes, I had gazed upon him. While unfinished, he was ugly then, but then those muscles and joints were rendered capable of motion, and became a thing such as even Dante could not have conceived. Page 43. All of these events were plagued by Victor's carelessness and hubris, which allows you to believe that his actions make him directly responsible for the outcome of the novel. If we can conclude that Victor is wholly responsible for his fate, in different circumstances could this not be true? If one person happens to make an immoral decision, could another person be justified in doing the exact same thing? Mary Shelley also happens to touch on this. She contrasts Victor's poor decisions with the other characters, highlighting how terribly Victor reacts to every event. Using the characterization of the monster and biblical allusions, she asks the question, is our behavior determined by our genetic structure, environment, etc., or do we actually have free will? Although the monster didn't originate from a single gene pool, instead certain features were carefully picked up by Victor and left completely out of the monster's control. Now this left him to live in unhappiness and was rejected by those around him because of how physically unappealing he was in comparison to societal norms. Not only that, but the monster felt betrayed because of how horrified the DeLacy family was even after having a nice conversation with the father. The monster's life was a literal contrast to Victor's, who had a normal childhood and had people to relate with and speak to, while the monster grew up having absolutely no one. As wondered by the monster on page 110, like Adam, I was apparently united by no link to any other being in existence, but his state was far different from mine. In every other respect, he had come forth from the hands of God, a perfect creature, happy and prosperous, guarded by the special care of his Creator. He was allowed to converse with and acquire knowledge from beings of superior nature, but I was wretched, helpless, and alone. He naturally notices that his upbringings were fundamentally different from that of Adam's, as he was entirely alone. These differences between the context of Victor's actions and the context of the monster's actions allow what the monster does to become significantly more justified and less morally compromising due to all the opportunities and warnings provided to Victor throughout his life, ones that the monster unfortunately never received. Although not biologically related, Victor is the closest thing that the monster has to a father, leaving those paternal responsibilities in Victor's hands. This ultimately provides insight that maybe all decisions you make in life are in some way influenced by environment, genetic structure, and development. Now we know there's no controlling certain external factors, although those blessed with excellent fortune, like in the case of Victor's circumstances, he shouldn't have gone wrong, but for some reason he did. The most accurate reasoning for this is most likely in part due to his hubris and overconfidence, making him feel like he could just go out and do something dangerous without the inclusion or consultation of others. Nonetheless, all very important and interesting when trying to understand what circumstances in life allow you agency and how to counteract or mitigate the lack of control allowed to you by fate.